Hi, everybody, and I'm live. Happy to be with you. Thanks for joining me. I do appreciate it. So tonight I'm going to talk about RTE Shenanigans, as the title suggests. It's not a major deep dive. It's just my initial thoughts on this. Just want to go through it because last night, as I was streaming, someone pointed out to me that my asylum industry video was gone, the one I did about asylum, and I went looking for it. So it was kind of funny that I was streaming at the time. And thanks for the 5x5s there, lads. And then I looked into it and I got the strike. So I'll just explain it to you basically, because I don't know, it's worth doing. So I got the strikes yesterday on about 4 or 5 videos, and I'm just focusing on one particularly because it's my kind of most the one I'm kind of proudest of or whatever, right? But I'm not really pushed about it. A few people have said to me, "Oh, that's the one you had most views on and stuff." I'll talk about this in a while, but that's not really my concern. You know, views are just views. They're like, I don't know. It's like if some people have seen your video and then the tally of how many people have seen it goes away. It doesn't change the fact that some people have seen it and that you did something good. So in terms of getting like the endorphins or the upcomies or whatever they call it, I have them, you know, so it's not, I'm not a clout hound too much, so I don't mind. But so the reason I am focusing on that video is just because it drew my attention for that reason, because it is my favorite video, I suppose, and also it's just good to focus in on one video and pick apart what's actually going on there in terms of the it being copyrighted to kind of analyze it via one video, and I'll look at the rest as time goes by. I think some of the others are more egregious. They're like, there's like I think there's one where there's like 15 seconds of like play of a thing. I think that might be the Sinn Féin video. Anyway, I'm not sure, fully sure on that. But the asylum one, I did do a kind of a deep dive, I suppose, today on that, and I may as well just talk you through it and then just talk about, and I'm not going to spend long on tonight. And so then I'll talk about the implications of it and all of that. And there's a few arguments around this. I could see someone easily, obviously foes would try to insult you or try to be derogatory in some way because that's what they're there for, right? But even people who are kind of maybe on your side might say, oh, you're like spurging out over a video, you know, just take it on the chin. It's whatever. Don't be getting precious about it, right? Who cares, you know? It's like, no, it's not about the fact that there's some videos. Like I said last night, videos can always be, I can always send them to people on the cloud, on BitChute, on this, on that. They can be accessed. The two questions for me are, and again, I'll talk about this in a while, but are, first off, why? So it's not that it happened. The fact that there's videos gone or whatever, that it wounds me or personally anything like that. It's the important thing is why. Why would this happen? And just to look at the circumstances around this happening. Of course, it's happened to other people as well. I don't know, should I name them or not? They know. Green Room definitely, and a few other YouTubers have had this happen to them as well. I think it's worth trying to do an analysis of YouTube in Ireland, other RTE clips. I've kind of heard on the grapevine that there are other RTE things, kind of clips that are taken on YouTube that haven't been taken down. So is it targeted to a political viewpoint or not? Right? That's what I mean by the why. Why is this happening? That's important. Last True Gale says he's been hit too. I wasn't sure whether some people want it to be disclosed, some don't. But so this was yesterday. I had like about 5 videos, all the same thing, basically. So what I'm saying about this one video, you can take as writ for other videos too. And I suppose, okay, so let's just talk about one other thing first. Yesterday, when I started my stream, I was streaming about whatever, you know, the nightly thing, some bit of news or whatever it is, or, you know, a bit of whatever I talk about, whatever it is I do, right? I pressed publish video or whatever. Not go live, but when I put the video up before I go live, that kind of 5-10 minutes when it's just sitting there, and it got hit with 12 dislikes. Again, is the question about hurt feelings? No, it's not about dislike or endorphins or bullying or anything like that, right? The question is, why were those 12 dislikes there? And I actually asked that at the start of yesterday's episode. I said, I wonder why they're there, just out of curiosity. Again, not bothered, just curious. Would that be the NGO people? Would that be someone else? Would that be maybe internecine bickering within this kind of Irish right type of thing? I don't know. Just a curiosity. And then as it happened, my videos all got, or a few of them, some of the good ones, got copyrighted later on. And that's just one thing, is like, I've never had that happen before where I've uploaded a stream and there were 12, or a dislike rate just happened that evening. That's never happened to me before. Now, I've been streaming for a couple of months now, and I streamed a bit before that too. I've generally been putting up YouTube videos for what? I don't know, 2 years now or something like that, for ages, right? And that's never happened before, and it did happen yesterday. And what also happened yesterday that never happened before is that I got copyright strikes. I don't know. Again, you could say, is that a conspiracy theory to say those two things occurred at the same time, and that's strange? Conspiracy theory, slightly. If I were to say I definitely am making that link and that is fully sure, and I know that, that would be me abusing your intelligence, right? Because I actually don't know that. But what I can say is that it's strange and the odds are a little bit funny. So that was that. And then I just looked into it. I checked out the and I want to show you the material. I wanted to show you the YouTube, what they show you, when you get copyrighted. But screen sharing that and stuff is a little bit weird, so I won't do that. So yeah, I'm getting distracted by the chat. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to try to avoid that because you don't want to see me getting distracted and fucking flailing. So let me screen share. I'll just rehearse what I put up on Twitter, because I organized my thoughts on there, so I might as well work off of those. I'll make that a bit bigger for you as well, I suppose. Nope, that didn't work. There we go. So what have we got here? So yeah, here are the just to give you an idea of what it looks like. Here's the claim on these different videos. So these were the ones: asylum industry bans protest in Ballinamore. Video title: government funded activism. And then, can Sinn Féin solve Ireland's housing crisis? Okay. Again, that doesn't mean anything in itself. Those are just the ones that got copyright struck. So as I was saying, so I looked through this video and I analyzed these clips, and I don't want to open them up now because this will be copyrighted, even though it wouldn't be a big deal. I don't mind losing this. I could put it on BitChute afterwards. The main thing is the live audience, you lads with me here now. But still, I'm not going to tempt fate and open it or whatever. But I put up so it's a 2-hour video, right? The asylum industry video is 2 hours and 1 minute long. So it's very long. Joel asks me, were they the only videos that had RTE footage? That's a good question. I haven't analyzed that. I mean, feel free to, crowdsource that and do it yourselves as well, like to spread the love. I will look through it, actually. It's a good question. Do I have other videos containing RTE footage? I'd say there's a high likelihood I do, because that's the nature of it. Again, my videos aren't just one big long rehash of RTE news videos, but they come up. It's natural. If you discuss issues within Ireland, you're going to end up doing that, like news clips and stuff. Again, the difference, there's no point rehashing a fair use kind of debate here, right? But just there's such a thing as common sense as well, and it particularly matters here because this, I'll get to it in a sec. This didn't happen by algorithm. They manually identified it. RTE manually identified it, right? Because if it was an algorithm thing, there'd be no discussion to have. But the fact that they manually did it means that it's not merely a question of law and a question of fair use, but a question of taking the initiative to do something, which they did. And why? Why would you do that? Even if, and I'm not granting this, but even if technically speaking, you were on solid enough ground to get away with it, the copyright strike, the question still is, yeah, but you manually did it. Why would you do that? So anyway, I'll try to do this in order. So I went through the different clips, and in my 2 hour long, that's a point I wanted to make, is that like fair use, you could have an endless discussion about that, but basically speaking, fair use is kind of like it has a lot of different aspects to it. It's not a it's a kind of malleable idea. It's one man's fair use is another man's copyright, slightly, but most people can agree that, like, so say you take an episode of, what do they play on RTE? I don't know, the house show, or something, makeup transformation, right? You take a video of makeup transformation or whatever it's called, and you take the entire episode of that and you post it on YouTube, and you post every episode on your YouTube channel. That's obviously copyright. That's a clear example of copyright. You're just taking it. And fair use then is if you, people saying ear to the ground, it actually was on my mind. So it was about the house, but you take, the fair use obviously is like you take a clip. And to be honest, I came up with an exaggerated version of what would constitute copyright. And when I try to give you an example, in my opinion, of what would constitute a kind of a classic, almost exaggerated version of legitimate fair use, I can't help but use my situation here as like a textbook example of what you would generally call fair use, which is, there is a piece of news, a news show or something like that. You take it and you play some of it to maybe demonstrate your point or to point out what you're talking about. But for the most part, it's you talking about it. You're building upon it, and it's just a small part of that. So I went into my asylum industry video to check that out. And again, I can't play the clips for you here now, but what I just did a little stopwatch kind of check on it. So it's a 2 hour piece comprised almost entirely of my own research and footage, right? Stuff I took all over the country, screen grabs I got, and this and that, all like 90% of it is my own stuff, right? My own video, my own clips, my own everything, research, like I say. And then I used commentary from some RTE clips, which combined to 4 minutes and 53 seconds. They actually didn't copyright strike all of those. They picked even less than that. So all in all, it was, of the 4 minutes, basically I talked about the clips for 5 minutes. But while I was talking about those, I only in total played the clips for 59 seconds, right? Call it a minute. So obviously the whole thing is like, for every part of playing the clips for those small couple of minutes, or less than a minute in this case, for every second I did that, I spent 5 seconds building upon them, talking about them, right? So it's clearly what you would call fair use. And that's just that. I have those clips there. So anyway, here's this other bit which I just noticed tonight, and I can show this, I think. So it's this YouTube kind of page thing where they tell you you've gotten your strike, or not a strike, but a copyright. And they give you they offer you the chance to snip it out, right? Which I won't do. I obviously won't Frankenstein my own work like that, because that goes to show how fair use it actually is, because if it were just me playing some random clip or something like that, just kind of robbing someone else's work, I could just take it out, or it wouldn't matter so much. But the point is that is in there. That if I were to take out the bit that I play of theirs, then I would be talking around something that I can't show you briefly, and it wouldn't really make sense. So I just need that there. I need that there to build upon it 5 times over with my own commentary or whatever. Again, I'm just pointing out just demonstrating how much it is a case of fair use, right? And then there's the dispute section, and I'm not showing you that now, but it goes into it. You have to demonstrate and tell them why it is fair use, which I'll be doing, and I'll get in touch with Broadcasting Authority and GDPR, find out. I want to know if my name was mentioned in any RTE communiques, obviously, right? So they can get deleting them now. Various options like that, right? I want to look into. So that's the dispute thing, right? I'll be working on that, checking it out. But between you and me, let's say, some tea. Yeah, they point out that the clips, the offending clips they're talking about here are 39 minutes 51 to 43:11, which is what 3 minutes and 35 seconds, I think, overall. And I did a second count again tonight of that, and of that 3 minutes and 35 seconds, I think I spent. I mean, how much did I spend? There's something like 45 seconds. So I played it for 45 seconds within that 3 minutes and 35 seconds. So of the offending period they're talking about of 3.5 minutes, I actually only spent 45 seconds of those playing it, right? So clearly, again, demonstrating the fair use here. But more interestingly, if you can see down at the bottom left here highlighted, we have content manually identified by the claimant. Now, I mentioned that already, but it's really important. And it brings me back to, and someone here says you can just, someone in the chat at JDG says you can just dispute it and say it was fair use, and companies will often back down. Again, yeah, maybe, and the video comes back and I have all my views and my glory and all, whatever you want to call it, right? If people were to think it's about that. But it's not about that for me. This is just a point of interest for me, because the question is, why did it happen? Why did it happen to a bunch of contemporary YouTubers, you could say, at the same time? Why did it happen to me the night I got the dislike raid? If it's manually done by the claimant, then they had to, I don't know exactly how that works, but the word manually is pretty straightforward in the dictionary, which means they had to, like, what, look through my videos? Like, if it's manually done, then how did they get into my video, which is 2 hours long, and get into 39 minutes and 51 seconds to find it? It suggests at the very least that there was someone trawling through 2 hour long videos to find what is, 30 seconds type of thing, right? In order to then launch the copyright claim. It's, it's not like, it would be different if I had the entire series of a TV show, episode for episode on my channel, and then it disappeared and it had a manually identified claim. You could ask the same question. You would go, well, why would RTE go to the effort to do that? You'd go, well, you can see why, right? Because they want the clicks on RTE Player, not on your YouTube channel. And because YouTube is handier than RTE Player, you're going to suck away all their viewers. And commercially speaking, that makes sense, right? So you can answer the question of why would they do that coherently and logically. But in my case, it's 39 minutes deep. It's, I contend, a fair use situation. And they go 39, 40 minutes deep in a 2 hour video to pull out 30 odd seconds in order to make the claim. You come back to the question of, why would someone do that? If we agree that someone did that, then why would you do that? I don't understand that. I just don't understand that at all. And there are more questions, like someone brought up a while ago, do their clips appear in other videos? I haven't checked that yet, but if they do appear in my other videos, then it would be like, well, why that video? Again, that's speculative. I haven't checked it. Again, we come back to the 12 dislikes thing, the dislike rate on the very same day, when neither of these situations have ever happened before. They both occur on the same day. It's a little bit strange. And then the second question is, and I'm still going to come back to that first question, but let's just dip into the second question, is what happens going forward, as posh people like to say. They like to say going forward a lot, and they like to say albeit, and they like to say, what's the other one? I was just joking about it a second ago to someone. They like to say remiss and moreover. So anyway, I've lost my train of thought because I started just randomly saying words posh people say. I genuinely have lost my train of thought because of that. Oh yeah, second question. Going forward. What happens from here? If you can't use RTE footage in a fair use scenario, right? In what most people will agree is a fair use scenario, then how can we comment on the news? How can we comment on both the material that they are recording or talking about or whatever, whether it's the news or primetime or something? How can we make our own original content which sources those or uses those as sources briefly, in a fair use way? If we can't do that, then how can we talk about the content of what, let's say, RTE are discussing? But more importantly, above and beyond the content of what RTE are discussing, what about when we want to discuss RTE's, or let's say RTE News's coverage in general, in order to say, for example, RTE's coverage of this news was completely biased. Here's what really happened. Let's say in a made up example here, you have your own footage. You were at the event. You were at the soccer match, right? And the score was 4-0 to Team A. And then you go on the news and they say it was 4-0 to Team B. And then you kind of want to make a video and go, the most bizarre thing happened with RTE, the news, our state broadcaster, right, who have an obligation to us. They are a state broadcaster, they're not private. I just want to correct the record, because I was there, and now the whole country is laboring under the false illusion that Team A won when it's Team B won. And I mean, you're not going to believe me if I tell you, are you? So I have to just show you the clips I have of Team B winning, and here's all the goals and everything. And then curiously, here's RTE News at 9 o'clock saying Team A won. And in order to demonstrate that point, you have to be able to show what they said, to comment upon it and to critique it, right? In a fair, again, you're not just copying and pasting the entire news segment, you're just pointing to a few bits. So that's an important thing. If we can't, it's one thing to say that we can't glean stuff from what they reported on itself, but to not be able to criticize the state broadcaster, right, is a problem. Again, this is a partisan point on my behalf, but I maintain that the state broadcaster is hopelessly biased and has the same interests as the state, and operates kind of as a proxy for the state in terms of propaganda and information control. I don't think that would be considered a controversial statement by almost most people in Ireland. Most people would kind of agree with that almost to some extent. That's definitely true. And as a state-funded broadcaster, that, you know, they more than almost anyone else have a duty to be criticized and be evaluated, as they are taxpayer funded, right? And yet they are going around the place laboriously going through 2-hour-long video clips to find what I consider a fair use situation, and to, I consider, erroneously reported as copyright. Bear in mind as well, as I said on this, I'll just give you my little tweet blurb from this. I said, RTE manually identified the content I spent 2 minutes and 35 seconds commenting on and 45 seconds playing in my own 2-hour documentary, which I uploaded, and this is important, 10 months ago. It's 10 months old, right? What is there? Why dig in there? Again, we're back to that question, that primary question of why. I don't understand. Why would that happen? There's no commercial. Oh, importantly to mention, I'm not monetized. I had to check tonight, because I mean, I wasn't aware. I was kind of going, if it is monetized, I'm not aware of it. Or if I am monetized, or the channel, or any videos or whatever, if I am, then I haven't seen any money or anything, right? But I just before I came on here, I checked my YouTube kind of dashboard thing, and I'm not monetized. I think I'm eligible to apply or something, but I just never applied. It never occurred to me. So I'm not monetized. So there's no money involved. There's no opportunity foregone for them, which again brings us back to the subject of fair use. It's like, in no way could someone argue that my use of that clip costs them views that they would have alternatively received. I mean, it's, you know, that's just true. Like, I mean, there's no way you could argue that. So yeah, it's just, we can't if we can't fight them, or not fight them, sorry, if we can, that's a giveaway, if we can't report on them, if we can't compete with them or at least critique their ideas or whatever, critique both their reporting and what they're reporting on itself, then it's kind of crazy. And then there's one last, so I talked about why, and I talked about going forward. Okay, we've got that, but the broader question I have beyond that is you know, someone asked me last night on last night's video a question which I'm not addressing tonight, but it sparks a thought in my mind, right? Someone asked me when I mentioned kind of offhand, I mentioned that they want open borders, and someone said respectfully, a good faith question of like, I mean, could you define who they are, and could you define what open borders is? Do you know what I mean? These are kind of assumptions, and I'm always cautious to address these things because I hate coming across as a kind of a fantasist or a conspiracy theorist or exaggerating claims. I will try to reduce claims, maybe even less than what they are, because then you're on solid ground and you have a just cause, and a true mandate, right? And similarly, someone could ask the question of a different night. I've heard this before, or at least I can imagine a reasonable, normal, maybe non-political person asking this question. And they might watch a few of my streams and just kind of say, you mentioned this a lot. Can you kind of back it up? And that question would be, when I would imply that there is a they that does something else, the they in this situation, they are out to get us, and they being the state at large, right? The state at large is not just the government building or the Department of Justice itself or kind of some EU branches or whatever. The state at large includes the likes of RTE. It includes almost, insofar as the state and corporate interests align, which they obviously do heavily, and all of the various kind of institutions, that kind of whole orbit, right, of the state at large. We all kind of inherently know what that means, right? So I would often claim that this state at large I'm talking about has it out for, I won't say has it out for me, like they stay awake at night thinking about me and how dangerous of a thing I am. Me, others, take your pick, right? The Gran Torinos is the whoever's, right? People who are nationalist, rightists, kind of what else could you call it? I don't know. That type of people. They have it out for us, and they are using every possible means, and the only thing kind of in the way is them not wanting to step too far over the line and actually throw us into a gulag or to raid us and all this, which they do in other countries. But the point I'm making is that I would make claims like that, and someone would go, can you prove it? And I would be kind of slightly left kind of wanting in my answer there. I might say kind of like, if you asked me kind of as a surprise, I wasn't expecting that question. And then it's kind of like, it's hard to answer because you're going, well, there's such a body of evidence and it's so ongoing and it's so much one thing after another that I kind of don't know where to start, maybe, if I'm not prepared to answer a question like that. And again, it's an idea for any other YouTubers or bloggers or writers or anything, to always try to consider the normal question that someone might ask you like that they go, I don't watch your stuff all the time. I don't watch all this stuff all the time. To make maybe, pieces where you go, here's a half an hour video or whatever, where I just go through this and make that case. So you can send them the link. I'm going to make a few videos like that, hopefully, answering some of these, like, what do you really mean by that? And is it so true? And one of those questions would be that the state kind of has it out for people like me, ideologically or whatever. And again, I can't answer that question tonight because I'm not prepared for it. I would have to sit down and have the chance to kind of assemble a body of evidence and work and review things and bring it all up again, right? So while I don't have a complete answer for you tonight, I do kind of say, I mean, how, or at least that the state is heavily biased in one way. It's a mix of having it out for people like me and people like us, and also having an agenda completely against ours, right? The idea that they are not a neutral arbiter of things, but that they are heavily politicized, right? More than they will or would be willing to let on openly. But what I can say tonight is that this is just another example. I have my point of view, right? I often struggle with the words nationalist or this or that. Let's just call it nationalist tonight for simplicity's sake, right? I have a nationalist point of view, and I make videos and I do activism and I do all of this. And you're in a situation where if these NGOs and everything, again, who I say it so much, are state funded, right? And these journalists who aren't quite state funded, but again, they have this relationship with the state, right? The symbiotic relationship. if they get your work details or they get your family details or your home, they could be trying to get you fired from your job. That's the key one. That's at the heart of everything, right? Or if they know where you live or whatever, right? But the main thing, the kind of the jugular that they'll really want to go for is the job, right? And so you have that to start with, right? And you go, that's just, to be honest, that's the foundation more than anything. It's like, you can be a climate change activist, you can be a whatever, you could be a radical environmentalist, you could be a I don't know what, like, right? You could be it's a kind of a cringe point to bring up, but you could be the most obscene communist, you can imagine, and you could work at, Ulster Bank, right? Yeah, and that would not be brought against you, but yet one ideology is, right? That's one thing, right? But then there's also the counterforce. So it's like, I'm advocating my point of view and my position with no funding. And if I was to have funding, it would be some kind of Patreon-y thing or something like that, right? So I don't have that. But even if I were to, that's relatively small and grassroots and whatever. But the people you're opposing, ideological opponents, because ideology is oppositional, you could say, right? There are these battle of ideas, culture wars, and all of that going on. The other side, so to speak, the direct opposite, you have, I always mention them, right? The NGOs, you have dozens and dozens of them, some of them funded to €1 million. I did a video called Government Funded Activism, which has gone on a copyright strike as well, right? If the irony wasn't good enough for you yet. I did a video on that about one day. There was me and a couple of peers or fellow people who agreed politically, did a free speech protest outside the Dáil. I'm not going to relitigate that video now, or that story, but the point of that video was for me to say there's a counter demonstration has been organized, and it's been endorsed and supported and promoted by a range of 20 or 30 NGOs, right? And I went through a selection of like only 10 of those NGOs, something like that, right? I forget. But I went through a selection of those NGOs, and I concluded that between them, they had 27 million in state funding. Somewhere between 20 and 30 million, right? What's the difference? Depending on what way you looked at it. You had 20 or 30 million in funding, and they were coming out to, ultimately that day violence was done, right? The only thing was the guards protecting our side, but the guards got what did they get? Something over the head. Some of you might remember some object, a tripod, camera tripod over the head, right? If the guards weren't there, that would have been going for my head, right? So there's no mistaking it. There's no ambiguity to this. So you have violence initiated by state-funded activists, borderline when they want to be kind of militias, right? But more importantly than beating you over the head with a tripod on it, more importantly and more harmfully, they will try to get you fired from your job and life destroyed and all of that, right? So on one end, it's done over the phone, over the newspaper article, over the press release, over the whatever. On the other hand, it's done with the camera tripod, right? So anyway, the state is out to get us, or has such an army lined up, not just to get us, but to also oppose our views and crush our views by sheer force and by sheer mass. The scale of propaganda that these people can engage in with tens of millions, potentially hundreds of millions in total, right? Against someone like me, right? I'm just one example. I'm not trying to be a big deal, but just I speak for myself. Someone like me who is just saying, like I've told you, I'm not monetized. There's no other, funneling of money or anything. I get no money for this, right? But I believe in it, and as people are entitled to their political points of view, and I have a channel, and I make videos, and that's all I do, right? Now the thing is, let's just boil it down, and which I started with. Let's boil it back down to the asylum industry, right? Again, we go too broad, so let's narrow it in again and just look at that, right, to get our heads around it. The asylum industry video, which is the one we're focusing on, was about, obviously, the asylum industry. Now, in that situation, again, I'll try not to relitigate that video itself, but in summation, I was taking on the entire, I mean, this could be a new video of itself, but like, and again, it's so broad, and to me, it's so obvious, and I've demonstrated it so many times before that I almost speak about it like it's an assumption. So for those who aren't familiar with things, apologies if you just take my word for it, or if you need me to flesh it out, I will in future, right? But what I had was, the entire state, the entire Department of Justice, right, which is directly connected to all these NGOs. I'm not talking conspiracy theory. I'm talking about fact. I don't speak in conspiracy theories, right? Connected to all these NGOs, like verifiably. They literally pay them directly, right? There's no secret made of that. The media, I could demonstrate that, and I have done, the way the media act in this situation. This is what the asylum industry video was effectively about, right? The whole thing, I was detailing the entire body of the state and all its little feelers that go into overdrive to combat someone who is saying something they don't like, which is like helping, as I said, what was it? The blurb of that video was, which I'm, I wrote that kind of quickly the night I released the video, and looking back at it, I'm like, I put that well, actually. I said, everything I've learned about the asylum industry in Ireland and how it's forced on marginalized rural communities through a system of state intimidation and manipulation, right? That's how I put it then. So that's what that video was about. And I was making that point of view, and the people who were making, just, if you want to know what the opposite point of view was, just think it was the opposite, right? It was that what I'm saying is terrible and untrue, and the asylum thing is the opposite to what I'm saying, and it's all good and blah, 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 and lies and everything from my point of view. And so it was me versus an army. You're talking in the entirety of RTE, the entirety of the Journal, the entirety of Joe, the entirety of Trócaire, the entirety of the Irish Refugee Council, the entirety of the Immigrant Council of Ireland, the entirety of ENAR, the European Network Against Racism, you name it, right? All of that, and I'm sitting there going, you have all of this power and all of these channels and options, right? And I am reduced to just uploading a video on the internet, right? I don't even have that much reach. I don't have lights, and well, I have one light here, but I don't have a studio or a producer or this or that or aides or researchers or legal offices. I'm imagining the RTE studios here. They have all this divided among themselves, right? All these roles. I'm just one guy who just took my own initiative to make my own video, as some others do here. You named them, Last Gale and all these other people, right? But from my perspective, that's where I'm at, and I'm trying to advance this message, and you have all these guns lined up against you in all of these different ways to stop you from doing what you're doing. That's effectively what it boils down to, right? The firing, the violence, the targeting of all aspects of your life, the just sheer volume of things up against your voice and demonizing you and everything else, right? Including the Department of Justice and a whole lot of them, right? The actual literal government, the literal heads of the police force, right? You have all of that up against you, and I'm making this one video, and I mention all of that to answer this kind of theoretical person's question of who would ask me, who is they, and are they really lined up against you, or are you just taking a few things? My question with this happening now, and I'm acknowledging the potential that maybe it's innocuous, maybe somehow this, I've described the preposterousness of this copyright strike, but in theory, isolated on its own, you could say, well, Garrod, it could still be innocuous, possibly. So, maybe. But my point is, with everything else I've just mentioned about the violence and the intimidation and the money and the NGOs and the 20, 30 million and about all that, right? How you take all of that and then this happens, just another headache, another push out to the margins, or this or that, or an impediment, right? My question is, at what point do we, now I know most of you would agree with me, but I mean, we more broadly, non-politicized people who maybe see someone like me from the margins or are slightly aware, but who consider themselves normal people, and they're a bit skeptical of maybe wild claims that someone like I would make. My question is, at what point with all of this do we just kind of come to a final accepted understanding that the state are lined up against people like me, who are apparently irrelevant and powerless and all this stuff, right? And our message is, oh, the Irish are too smart for this, would have no interest in it and stuff like that, right? But on the other hand, all of this lined up, at what point do we acknowledge that this is literally, and I don't mean conspiracy theory like tinfoil hat, I mean the word conspiracy literally. At what point do we just accept the obvious, that there is a far-reaching state conspiracy, and I say this that as the state at large, a far-reaching state at large conspiracy against nationalists in Ireland, nationalist political voices, activists, etc. At what point does that just become a foregone conclusion, uncontroversial? We all know it. It's just a fact, and it should be accepted by everybody, right? And just accept that that isn't true for people who are on the radical left. It could slightly be true around the Sinn Féin margins, right? But nothing like what we get. At what point does a person looking at this kind of half from the outside just say, you know what, Gerard, for all of this, I'll do you one bit of justice here and say, you know, I might not agree with you on everything. I might, whatever. I might not believe and just agree with everything you say or accept everything you say as a given. But what I will do is just say, at this point, I will conclude that unambiguously there is an active, broad state conspiracy against nationalists in Ireland, activist political voices at all levels, big, small. And that's how I feel with this. You know, it's a small thing. You could say it's an isolated thing. It's a copyright strike, but it just brings to mind, I'm on a small YouTube channel. I haven't actually realistically copyright struck you. There's nothing for you to gain from it. You're the one with a 400 million annually or whatever it is, which I pay for, right? You're the one who has all that. You already have all the tools you need to be bigger and better than me and to just ignore me. It's like, imagine it were swapped. I can just imagine being the head of RTE and saying, I have hundreds of millions here. And not only that, but the NGOs are on my side in opposition to these people. I've literally the entire world, and this guy has a channel, right? And not just me, but the others. Take your Gran Torinos and the others and everybody else too, right? At what point, would they say, oh, that's enough? But it's not enough. They have to always push you back. Now, there's a grand irony to this I want to mention because it's kind of funny. So where are we? Go to bigger screen here for, no, actually it's okay. But I'll keep my face up and big here. There's a funny aspect to this, and let me just get to it. So this hit me today as well. So I'll just read off what I said earlier just to repeat it. Cherry on top of all of this is that RTE News ran a video of mine on the 14th of September last year, so which would have been a month after I released the asylum industry video. They took a video of mine I took on my phone in Uachtarard. And they took that video and they used it as the central element of their top story on the news. I'm talking on the TV. You put on the TV, there's the 6-1 or the 9 o'clock news on. I'm talking about that news, right? They took my video without asking me, without crediting me, nothing on their news, on their TV show, right? They took that and used it. And again, I mention it as the central element because that's the opposite of what I did, which was fair use, right? Theirs didn't form the crux of my argument at all. I just had to include it in order to bolster my point so people didn't think I was lying. I used their video, 30 seconds of it. They used my video very differently, where they had an entire story which involved the Taoiseach commenting, this and that, star-studded kind of story for their evening news, their lead story that day. But their entire lead story it rested 100% on the video I uploaded to my Twitter. It was of Noel Grealish calling African spongers or whatever, right? Or whatever he said, right? And they were all about that story. And it was my video. If they didn't have that, then they were still in speculation land and they were still kind of towing around with it. They had their video and they had their story there. And like I say, it's at the core of their story, right? So again, it's not just a random bit of B-roll where I took a picture of a field and they put that in because they thought it was a nice picture of a field for a second. No, it was the center of their story, their lead story that day, without asking me or crediting me. So not only do they take my TV license bucks, I pay my TV license, right? But they earn advertising money. And you look at TAM, which is the advertising agency that does ratings and all of that, and you go through how they do branding and adverts and sell ads. They're an in-between between companies and RTE. And you see it's Lidl and Tesco's and everything else, right? So they earned money from the Lidls and the Tesco's and all of these guys on their TV show because, and it being their lead story, it was the main reason people were watching, you could argue. they earned money from my video without asking me or crediting me, right? Much more egregious than mine. Mine's not even egregious, but if it were to be called egregious or a misstep, which it isn't, theirs is 100 or 1,000 times more, right? They didn't ask me or credit me. And then they have the balls to make erroneous copyright claims. It's so funny. I'm just like going, like, how much insult to injury can there be? You know, I talk about how, so in this video, I've talked about why would they do it and the circumstances around it. Furthermore, what does this mean going forward and being able to comment on the news at all? Thirdly, at what point do we admit that there is a concerted state conspiracy against nationalists, right? And fourthly, they then turn around and do it to me. They take my stuff. So not only do they suppress my stuff on one end and suppress me and do all this and everything else, right? And all of us guys, but they actually take my stuff away from me and use it and throw the middle finger. You know, very odd. I'll just play you the video because it's kind of funny. You know, so here's the RTE clip, right? You know what's funny? It just, I can just imagine a real cherry on top here, which is, I play this video to demonstrate that RTE made an erroneous copyright claim against me while using my footage in their news, but while I play them playing my footage without credit on my video. So when I play my video, them using my video, but in my video, then this video gets copyright struck, right? So if there's someone in there who has a real sense of humor in RTE, you know, don't even bother. But here's what it was. It was their story about Grealish. I'll just skip through. Widely criticized.
Of those remarks emerged today.
Right? Oh, can you hear it? I forgot about that because I do get this. I don't want to be talking like an idiot, right? And it probably isn't playing, is it? So just let me know. Give me a 5x5 or a 0x0 or however this works. If you could, it's not playing. I can get this going. Bear with me, and I'll finish up soon. I'm not going to take any more of your time. So let me just share screen. Again, I don't know why this happens, but it does, and that's okay. Sure. So it should be working this time. So you heard my bit anyway. I was just saying that they used my video and everything.
His reported comments about asylum seekers was widely criticized, and a recording of those remarks emerged today.
Blah, blah, blah. Noel Grealish. That's the center of RTE story, leading story that day. And then here's my Twitter. I mean, it's my video, right? Same video. You know, you get the point. But this is what I find funny, right?
Seekers was widely criticized, and a recording of those remarks emerged today. And a recording of those remarks emerged today. And a recording of those remarks emerged today. And a recording of
those remarks emerged today. It emerged. Can you believe it emerged? The recording emerged. So that's the kind of scumbags we're dealing with, right? That's the kind of the chutzpah that you're getting it from all angles, and it's never enough. So just one more thing, just to it's another little bit of minor conspiracy, you could say, on my behalf, but again, it's kind of like if they manually found this video to report it, right? And went 39 minutes deep in a 2-hour video to find a 30-second clip that I was commenting on for 5 minutes on the 30 seconds. If they did that, then was it just, and we've acknowledged that there could be no commercial gain or motivation to do that. So the question is, what motivation? Do RTE have it in for me or something like that, right? The question that has to be asked is, we know the NGO people have it in for me, not just me, but from my perspective, I'm going to say me, they have it in for me, right? And it's literally their job is to have it in for me, right? Which is, again, the point. But if that's the case, and we know that's what the NGOs are like, all these people, these kind of borderline Antifa, state-funded activist type people, NGO heads, the question emerges that we put that together. RTE did it, no commercial value. All of that, why would they do it? You know, no rational explanation for that. They did it out of some kind of, you know, a suspect kind of malevolent reason of not liking it or not liking the message or being a state actor or something. The question is, the NGOs are the ones who watch us. The average RTE producer might not like us. They might be a bougie kind of a outgroup preference kind of scumbaggy, like wanky person, right? They might be that, granted. But they're not the type of person. They're too busy with the, they're too busy with the wine and with the, going out to a play and all of this stuff to be trawling through the internet like a sado. That's the NGOs. They're the ones who spend all day listening to your videos and recording bits and putting snippets away and all of that, right? So the question has to be asked, and it's a reasonable question. I'm not saying I know the answer to this, is it possible that the NGOs liaised with RTE because, for example, in my case, I make my videos in a very moderate way, right? I don't think you could take any of my videos, certainly not the asylum industry video, and report it for a hate or any of that, right? Oh, by the way, RTE released, or not RTE, but sorry to go on, right? I'll try to finish. But Irish Times released an article, I've mentioned this before, calling me racist and this and that and mischaracterizing me and everything, right? One of the key aspects, they focused on that video, the asylum industry video, and they took two little tiny points which were arguably kind of debatably incorrect, depending on what way you looked at it, and what he was spreading misinformation, his video which is full of misinformation, right? So they've tried already to do down that video and do me down, but via the video, that's what really triggered them. So again, I come back to that question to the person on the margins here who would say to me, are you being a conspiracy theorist to say they have it out for you and your point of view and your research and your message? It's like, well, or if I were to say that this is a malevolent act, this copyright strike, they would go, oh, well, do you know it is really? Do you have any reason to believe it? It's like, well, the last experience I've had was the Irish Times thing, right? Trying to demonize me and trying to diminish the factual basis of my video. And then this happens. I mean, again, it's back to the thing of at what point can we just agree that that's the state of affairs? Now, the question of, if we agree that they, you know what I'm talking about, I've caveated enough on that they want to take down that video and they don't like me and everything else. If we agree on that, then the question is how. They can't just be too blunt about it. YouTube can't take down a video that literally doesn't even give them an opportunity to falsely characterize it as hate or anything, right? So they can't do that. Charlie Flanagan, the Minister for Justice, can't just come out with a decree saying the video has to be taken down. He would like to, right? But he can't do that. There are practical limitations where optics, the look or whatever. And you go, okay, well, if the optics are limited, but they don't like it being there, is it unreasonable to claim that some of these NGO actors, activists, and kind of little agents would have seen this as an opportunity? But remember, it's not the NGOs that reported it. They didn't report it. They didn't mass flag my thing and get things taken down or whatever. No. It was RTE directly brought the claim. So the question again has to be asked, is it unreasonable? I'll only say that much. Is it unreasonable to speculate that maybe the NGOs liaised with RTE because that was an opportunity to take down some videos they don't like? Is that possible? I don't know. So like I say, we had a few questions here, why going forward? At what point do we accept what's really going on as uncontroversial and just a given? And a few other bits. So that's me tonight. Anyway, I appreciate you joining me. I think maybe some of you were talking in the chat about getting other people together who have had copyright strikes. And when I say this, I'm not trying to be selfish to myself. Anybody else Irish who's had a copyright strike or been targeted in the same way, I don't mean to sound like the Pope here, but I'm trying to, insofar as I represent myself and you're in the same situation, then think of it like I'm trying to push for you as well, right? So, and there's another question of is it worth pushing back on this? Maybe you should just try to avoid the Eye of Sauron, in future or whatever. It's like, damn right, push back on this. It's not about the fact that I had a video that you can't see anymore, because you can see it. You can see it somewhere else, albeit the poor man's version of it somewhere else. The kind of clout of having a few views, not a big deal. I say that sincerely. I don't mind that. It's about what lies beneath all of this, and you can't allow what does lie beneath all of this to go on unchallenged. You just can't. So that's the story. I'm going to go to bed, basically. I'll kind of calm my tits after this, and yeah. There's plenty to be looking up and doing anyway in the meantime. I'll be back tomorrow, and thanks everybody for watching. Ihuwa, see ya.